Good afternoon, everyone. This is a very exciting time. I'm Tawny Holmes-Leibach. I'm Educational Policy Consultant for the National Association of the Deaf and Staff Advocate for NDEC, Staff Liaison. And I'm delighted to be here and part of the NDEC team with our first all-virtual conference. So thank you, first of all, for joining us in this first panel for this year's conference for 2020. I'm going to review a little housekeeping information before we get started and then jump into the panel. A few accessibility features. If you are using a mobile device or an iPad, you might want to consider changing over to either a laptop or desktop, if at all possible. It seems Zoom has more features and is more robust on a desktop or laptop than a mobile device. If you are on the desktop and you can see Zoom, that's terrific. If you'd like to avail yourself of the English interpretation, you can also make sure your volume is up and you should be able to hear that just fine. On the bottom, there's also a button for closed captioning, so feel free to select that if you'd like to watch captioning or a transcript. So we are delighted to be able to see all this on Facebook Live, streaming via our Zoom platform. There may be slight technical delays given the transition between the two platforms, but it should work out just fine. That said, if you do have any technical issues at all, if you can't see the video or the audio drops out, for example, please chat us in the chat button that you can see at the bottom of your screen. So any tech questions, please send into chat and our wonderful tech team will do their best to address those for you. If you're using a desktop or a laptop version of Zoom, you should be fine. If you are, you should be able to see captioning, you should be able to access the audio feed. If you don't know what is where, maybe, or you can't see all the buttons that we've just mentioned, you might actually need to update your version of Zoom. It does not work best in a web browser. It actually works best in the app. And you might want to make sure that you have the app so you can see the closed caption button down the bottom and all of the other icons that I've just mentioned. You can also modify the screen to your preferences. So if you look at the top, you see a small frame and a four-cornered frame that will show you speaker view. You can click it and see gallery view. You can make the video small and the PowerPoints large, or you can do the opposite, whatever works best for you. You do that by the two small white lines that are in between my screen and the PowerPoint right now. Select on those two small lines and use your cursor to drive to the left or the right, and the two screens will resize accordingly. So you can make the PowerPoint as small as you like and the video as large as you like, whatever suits your preferences. Should you have questions that you'd like to ask of our student panelists, you are absolutely able to do that. You can ask at any time. There is a QA icon down the bottom that you should be able to see. You can put your question in there and our wonderful team will be working behind the scenes to organize all of those questions, and at the appropriate time, they'll be addressed to the panelists. Now, again, if you're having technical issues about captioning or the screen, those go in the chat box and the tech team behind the scenes will work on those to make sure you're sorted out. So they are different. The QA is for questions for the panelists and the chat box is for technical support. That said, we cannot imagine having been able to host this wonderful event without our fabulous sponsors. So I'd like to take a moment right now to thank CSD Learns. So CSDL, their wonderful team, has been absolutely amazing in helping us sort out all of the virtual components for this event and for support in myriad other ways. So our appreciation goes out to CSD Learns. It also goes out to the National Association of the Deaf, under whose auspices we are hosting this NDEC conference. They've provided support with forms, with websites, technical support, organizing, financing, public relations, marketing. So many thanks go out to the NAD team. We also have some additional sponsors to thank, those being Dawn Sign Press, much appreciation, the American School for the Deaf, thank you, the Indiana School for the Deaf, we're very grateful, and Gallaudet University, grateful to you as well. We very much appreciate all of the support that you have given for NDEC's 2020 inaugural online event. This is part of NDEC Engage, and that's what we hope this event is going to be via virtual means this year. So we're delighted to be here with you all. And at this point, I think we're ready to introduce our panelists. We have three wonderful students who are going to join us today, who have been doing wonderful work in their high school experience, the extracurricular activities, and the things in which they've been engaged. The three of them are going to come on screen and talk to you from the perspective of high school students who have navigated the K through 12 timeline, gone through that journey, and going to talk to you about their experiences, which is our chance to see what the perspective looks like from the end users of all of this K through 12 information. So we can take that chance to get that view and put some of their perspectives and thoughts into practice. They may certainly be an impact on us as we go forward. So I think we are just about to turn the PowerPoint screen off. Terrific. So first of all, thank you all so much for joining us. And I think we should start, of course, with a brief introduction. So who you are, where you're from, and what you think your immediate next steps are.
So my name is Sabrina Firl, and I'm going to be a junior this fall at Maryland School for the Deaf. I actually have a position on the NDEC board. I'm the student representative. So hi, everybody.
Thank you very much. Who'd like to go next?
I could go. I'm Liliana Ortiz, and I just graduated from the California School for the Deaf in Fremont. And this fall, I will be enrolled at RIT. Super
wonderful.
Excited.
Hi, everyone. I am Natnail Tolossa. I have just graduated from MSSD, and I will be heading to RIT in the fall as well. Go Tigers. Terrific. Well, we have a series of interesting questions for you panelists. So looking to get your expertise and insights on this. So let's start with your high school experience. What's the most fun thing that you can remember from your high school experience, and what was the most challenging thing? So if you don't mind sharing a little bit of those, and feel free if something comes to you later, you can always bring it up later. But right now, the most fun and the most challenging aspect of your school.
I'll start with the most fun experience. When I came in as a first-year student, everything was different, right? You have this like level of independence that you don't have before. You have to really depend on yourself. I mean, of course, you know, your parents are there, but they're not really like on your back as much. So that was sort of fun for me. The most challenging, I think, is the mental health stress stuff, you know, managing sports and school and everything else that goes into it. So I would say that was sort of the tough experience, is like balancing that. And I mean, I'm still dealing with it. But, you know, you learn a lot from it for sure.
Thank you so much for sharing. Who'd like to go next?
Well, my most fun experience, I think I'll say the same thing, coming at the first year, feeling really awkward, and then, you know, becoming a senior and having my last year of high school and reflecting on all that had gone on during that time. You know, some students commute and some students stay in the dorms, right? So I was a student who stayed in the dorms. And so learning how to cook, for example, learning time management, because I was pretty much, you know, on my own, learning communication skills to deal with my fellow dorm mates and so forth. Time management is a really, really big skill because I had a lot on my plate, and just trying to sort of figure it all out, that was probably a real challenge, but learning it was a great skill.
How true. I can certainly relate to that. Natnail? Yeah, so 4 years of high school. I don't know that what the single most fun thing was, because I had a lot of fun in high school. Prom was great fun, for example. Sports is great for me. I was involved in a lot of sports activities. So I think everyone, you know, in my high school, I feel like I was friends with all of them. It was really rich in that way. But I would say the commute was a challenge. I was a day student, so I commuted for the academic part and also the extracurricular bits like school. And then I was part of a couple of committees in my senior year, and so incredibly busy. So time management and that commuting side, I think those were the really hard parts in school. I think that felt like a little bit too much work in a way. And in college, I'm not expecting that to be easy. I'm expecting to have some frustrations there as I go in as well. But I think I'm fairly well prepared. And, you know, I think I know where I'm going to RIT, so I think I'll be okay. 20. Right, and, you know, some things that happen that we just have to continue dealing with. And time management, I think, is going to be an issue for all of us all the time. It's juggling activities, figuring out what to say no to. I think it's a very normal part of the student experience for you as student leaders. But I also think it gets slightly easier as you go along. So I hope that that's the case for you. So back to the challenges for a minute. Let's look at COVID-19 as an additional challenge. Could you share a little about how you and your school and your families made the transition from face-to-face education to this online virtual environment? What did that look like for you? Is there any particular parts you had to deal with? Liliana?
So the transition for us, it almost felt like we were starting all over again. You know, you're used to a certain routine when you go to school, you have your schedule, it just becomes very routinized, and we really had to kind of do a hard reboot on it. I have siblings as well, very little, 5, 3, and 1, and I felt kind of torn because I was dealing with some childcare issues as well as going to school virtually. So I had a lot of support from the school, and my parents helped with time management, but I would say that it took a lot to sort of roll with those punches.
Thanks for sharing. I can see why that would be a challenge. Sabrina?
Do you want to go, Natnail?
Oh, okay, sure. So as a senior, I was aware that it was my last year and there were an awful lot of things I wanted to do before graduating. Certainly, I wanted to be able to see my second home again, which is what I call school. And RIT is going to be my third home. So I think it's a little tough to have made that transition in the middle of the semester to go online. And online in and of itself is not that easy. I mean, face-to-face is really good, but this transition was awkward in many ways of trying to deal with how to get teachers' attention, how to figure out getting some time with my instructors. And MSSD did a pretty good job, and you know, they work with students from all over the country. So then when we go virtual, we've got time zones to deal with as well as that when people went back to their home environments. So it's been a big challenge, for sure. 20, definitely. Time zones nationwide, I'm sure, were an impact. Sabrina?
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, I would echo what Liliana said. You get used to a certain schedule, even your after school activities, you know, running track, whatever it might be, you have a particular schedule. And then with COVID, it's like everything changed. Originally, I was not anticipating it to be such a big deal. I was wrong. I was wrong about that. But, you know, they took some time to sort of figure out the e-learning part. So we had a bit of a slower transition, and yet it wasn't really smooth either. So like sometimes we would have Zoom meetings and I couldn't get in, or I wasn't there, or we didn't have a Zoom meeting or something. And then, you know, they would send a YouTube video or something. And it was just all these different kinds of workarounds. I think communication could have been enhanced, I would say, I guess. But yeah, face-to-face, I mean, it's just a different experience, and to have like almost an overnight transition, you know, the lack of sports, the lack of socializing time, and usually we try to balance school, you know, the academic stuff with all the other stuff, and this time we just couldn't. Actually, can I add to that about personal relationships? Moving to online really felt like a disconnect with people in terms of having those relationships.
Yeah, and I will say that it's going to look quite different in the fall, as I understand. There'll be some sort of hybrid possibly between real online and face-to-face. So I wonder what that process is going to look like as they transition back. At RIT, I think it's going to be the same. So hopefully they're ready to get that going without the same kind of awkwardness that we had this time around. And some things were really quite seamless, but not everything. And so I think it's about learning from experience. So, you know, what I look at right now versus in 50 to 60 years, if the same thing happened again, you know, I'd be able to tell that generation of younger people that they'll get through it. Tawny, right. It's a real opportunity for us to learn some lessons here and keep them to apply for things that might arise in the future. You're correct. Now, Sabrina, you just said
we weren't using Zoom. And so it wasn't, you know, they just had other platforms. It's better than nothing, but it wasn't what I was expecting. So.
Tawny, absolutely. I can see that it would be different experiences. And there's synchronous versus asynchronous. That also makes a difference in the online world. So when you can meet, when you can't, if you're all together at one time and it's synchronous, that's a different experience to when it's asynchronous and perhaps you've recorded your videos separately and submitted them differently. And then you've got to follow some of the state regulations and then look at access and make sure that the system's selected and the platforms are accessible for all. So yeah, I'm certainly sure that there are challenges in all of those pieces.
Sabrina, that's interesting.
And asynchronous has its pros and cons, as does synchronous. Liliana, did you want to add something?
Yes, this is Liliana. In terms of Zoom, you know, some of the students don't have laptops at home. And so the laptops were provided, you know, they were sent home so that everybody could have access to the internet learning.
Right, and Natnail? Yeah, our school was more laptop oriented. They did give out some iPads that you could take home to use, which were a little more accessible, but then you had to think about bandwidth and whether you had sufficient internet. And then I understand that the state said they were helping with internet, but that means there are a couple of different kinds of students. Those who had a few more options perhaps and could go ahead with assignments, work at their own pace, you know, signal if they needed help. And then perhaps another group who did it a little differently, worked at a different pace. So I think the option in there was good, but time management really came to the fore for that. Tawny, yes, definitely slightly different experiences. Now we do have more questions, but I just remind our audience members, please submit your questions to the QA box as well, because we will get to as many of those as we can. Okay, now for our panel. If one of your teachers came up to you and said, what are high school students going through right now? What are students your age, your generation, what are they up to? What do we need to know? What would you like to tell those teachers? What do you think it's most important to tell them if they actually invited your comments?
This is Liliana. I would say that, you know, to all my friends, we were just hanging in there, you know, just getting through it. I was looking forward to graduation, but I don't actually feel like I graduated. You know, it was just kind of like it just ended without any big sort of sense of ceremony and wrapping it up and ritual and all of that stuff. So I think we're all just feeling a bit disappointed about that. But of course they were all very supportive and I'm thankful for that.
Tawny, so you think perhaps it's the celebration in the fall, slightly delayed, but give you an opportunity to say goodbye in person? Sure. Sabrina?
It's a tough question because there's so many things going on, right? And so on social media, we're all like clicked into different movements and different issues like Black Lives Matter, which is important and just amazing to see that people are coming out and supporting it. There's just a lot going on. And having the sense of everything that's going on and putting it on social media, it's a tough question because it's not an easy, you know, answer. People are in quarantine and it's just, there's a lot going on.
Certainly, I appreciate that. Natnail? The day I got my degree, I went to MSSD to pick it up. And, you know, I was excited because it was supposed to be a big graduation, but it was really an anticlimactic experience. I walked up, they gave me my piece of paper, and that was it. There was no big crowd or anything sort of official ceremony-wise. They just gave me my certificate and I was on my way. So, I mean, you know, what do all these years mean to us for missing this life event? It's a little frustrating when I think of all of the other seniors. And I don't know, perhaps a little disappointing. So for the future generations who come in and go to high school, what that last year means is that, you know, one day it'll be gone and your next part of your journey will begin. And it may be a bit disconcerting for you. But high school's not meant to be easy. It's meant to be a learning experience and it's meant to be rich. So keep that in mind.
I'm going to take that advice, right?
Warning. Right. I mean, graduating high school is a milestone in and of itself. But once it's done, in the current environment, it perhaps doesn't quite feel like you've actually finished it.
Liliana, exactly.
20. Okay, so as you get ready to go to college, for a couple of you, and Sabrina, not quite you yet, but nearly. So as you get ready to go back to your academic institution, are you ready for the academics? Are you ready to get in and start learning? And how can teachers help support you, be it teaching services, tutorial services? What tips do you think would be worthwhile to help students prepare? And it might be things like seeing the material, or you know, how are you going to get ready for fall, in whatever format it comes in, face-to-face with a mask or hybrid or completely online, etc. What kind of support do you think is necessary for getting ready for your next school year? Liliana?
This is Liliana. I think in terms of the resources actually have to be a multiplicity of resources, not just one thing. You know, like Zoom is one platform, but there are other platforms that could be used. And maybe, you know, maybe you'll look at a PowerPoint in a totally different platform side by side or something. I think I would be more motivated to finish my work on time if there were just a multiplicity of methods to do it in.
20. Options are certainly nice. Natnail or Sabrina, did you care to respond? Natnail? Well, so my question is what RIT looks like when it's open in the fall. And my understanding is that there'll be hybrid classes, some face-to-face and some online. But what we don't know is whether that will be on alternate days or what that exactly is going to look like, just that it will be something hybrid. So I think the resources will be important. When we're face-to-face, how we get assistance from that, what internships might look like, what exactly is going to be open as we continue the process of going back to full opening, and what it looks like when all of the students are fully back on campus. So I think there's a lot of work to do in that, and to make sure that we have the right resources to try to, at the very least, reduce the spread of COVID when we're there.
Yeah, this is Sabrina. I mean, I've seen, you know, people were saying, well, we should go ahead and do it with Zoom, or we should continue with the way that we've been doing it. There were some, you know, discrepancies. I really like face-to-face learning. I think, you know, that real person contact, for me, I just learn better in that environment. So even though I'm saying that's what I like, I mean, I guess if you have to wear a mask, that does compromise the communication a little bit, but we've got to figure out something, you know, we've got to figure out some, and I don't really know the answers, but something where, you know, something that would make us, I don't know, keep our motivation for learning, because you do get a little bit stir crazy, just, you know, like sitting in your room at your computer. So I don't know, something with the scheduling for me, I would say. This is Liliana. Let me jump in there. Having the different environment to go to, you know, there's home, and then there's school where there's students and there's staff, and now I'm at home, and there's family, and there's family, and there's more family. So that really is a different experience.
Tawny. Yeah, you raised some very good points. I think it is hard to beat face-to-face learning. You're there with your instructors and with your peers, you're co-learning, you have the freedom to communicate. think it is hard to beat that. And we don't know how long the implications of COVID are going to last. Hopefully not forever. I'll say it that way. Yeah, hopefully our wonderful doctors and scientists are going to solve this before too long. So I'd like to ask a question now that sort of looks at your total high school experience. And I know for a couple of you that's 4 years, and for one of you that's 2 years. But what's your experience been with things like bullying, relationships in school, distance learning like we have now, any anxiety that may have come up? Are there any problems that you think come up consistently for high school students that you've recognized, for example, that you think are worth sharing? Liliana?
Yeah, I would say for my peers, some of the struggles are, coming into CSD and for many reasons wanting to go to CSD and not being able to, or not thinking that they can do it. And so there's some people who are really fighting just to have a particular educational placement. And so some of them, had to kind of prove, or, why this was a placement that would work for them. And then there are just tremendous growth so that you can see students really thrive in the system. So something about how students are moved from mainstream into deaf school environments, I think is really problematic currently.
Tawny, sure. That relates to educational policy with the US Department of Education and some of the laws we have on the books. It really is important to recognize the frustration that some students have in selecting the school that's going to be their best placement. It's very important to recognize. Sabrina?
I would think that my school had a big issue having to do with like serious consequences. I mean, I don't have a full 4 years to share with you yet. I only have 2 years worth to share with you. But, if people have like racist or sexist comments, it's not taken seriously. It's not really addressed. And there seems to be a lot of finger pointing and sort of pushing off of responsibility. So, and I recognize the privilege that I have, and I really can't compare my experience to that of other students. I want to be a change agent, and I'm not even sure how to do it. So yeah, I think stuff like that. There's a lot of issues that happen at school. This is Liana, that's important.
Tawny, yeah, I think that's that occurs in a lot of schools. I think it's systemic. It's certainly not just an individual place. Natnail, did you want to comment? Yes, so I've been at 8 schools so far in my life. And so I've seen a lot of differences. In the public school, I don't think they ever really understood the impact of being a deaf kid in that kind of environment. So some of the struggles we had about being taught, we didn't want to, they didn't want to work harder necessarily with deaf kids, and we sometimes got pushed to the side. And then in the deaf school, when I came in, I found that I got pushed more, which was great in terms of my abilities. So when a student transfers to a residential school, it can be tough though, because the transition's really different from the mainstream environment, where maybe things are a little easier and smaller coming into a deaf school in a full class of deaf students. So in high school in and of itself is harder than younger grades. And we're there for education. But I also think that we have to consider the additional stuff that can go on. So we've got to face some of these issues and get a little more support on boundaries and things like that. So I think that's some of the issues that I've seen in the deaf school environment. And kids come in wanting to learn ASL and figure out their identity, and they get told they can't, or they get pushed out of that a bit. And then they don't have the same choices later. So people want to come and join the deaf community, for example, and don't know how, but they want to figure out who they are within that space. And then, what does exposure to the deaf community look like? That's tricky too. Tawny. Yeah, that's actually something the NAD is paying attention to, because they firmly believe that all deaf children should have access to a quality education that lets them learn appropriately and capitalize on their full potential. So that's a commitment that NAD has to continuing to address this problem. And every student, regardless of background, socioeconomic status, home life, etc., every student absolutely deserves to be part of a quality educational program. And there are certainly good points about mainstream programs, as there are about deaf schools, but you should have the right to choose the environment that is best suited to your needs for education. I'd support that. Okay, we're going to pause for just a moment, give the interpreters a chance to have a quick glass of water, and we will be back with you momentarily. Okay, and we need to help the interpreters identify who we are as we go if we've forgotten. So I'll ask us now to do a slightly different turn-taking approach and to raise your hand to be acknowledged so that we can put your name in and the captioner can follow who's speaking. Because apparently some people are a little lost about who's making which comments. So if you could all help me do that, that would be terrific. And I'll also need to remind myself to take it a little easier. We've got plenty of time for the questions and the answers. So I'll take the pace down a little bit and make sure that everyone has access to both the signed comments, the spoken English, and the captions. Now that said, terrific conversation so far. You've been very thought-provoking for me already. So I think it's a good time for a recap question. As you look at your generation, and you look perhaps at people who are a little older than you, perhaps that's cousins and other family members, and look at your own experience and your own peers, what are the big differences that you see? Sabrina?
Yeah, this is Sabrina speaking. Okay, the big difference is that confidence, the level of confidence, it's just a different kind of confidence, how they talk, how they sign, you know, like back then, I don't know how long ago, but you know, whatever, back then, some other generation, they maybe signed slower. I can't explain it exactly, but like more clear. And I think now we're a little bit quicker. And we accept so many things that maybe previous generations didn't have tolerance for, but we do. I mean, there's lots of, things that are acceptable now to our generation. I could give you lots and lots of examples, but let me just pick one. Like GLBT, rights, for example. I grew up with that being not a thing, right? I didn't have any sense that there's anything wrong with that. And yet in previous generations, that wasn't the experience. There were certainly people who thought it was wrong or whatever, or, conservative types of beliefs. And that's just not at all where I'm coming from. I think it's just totally accepted in our culture. We're open-minded. We've learned a lot about us. So I think that might be the big difference between the generations.
Tawny, great, cool perspective. Liliana, do you want to address that question?
Yeah, this is Liliana. I would say that, with my older cousins and those folks, they went to schools in really different kinds of environments. Like I'm going to New York, I'm going to RIT. Everybody older than me stayed home, stayed in California. And I'm like leaving home and going really far away. So I think there's like a family belief that you should stay local, let's go to CSUN or go, one of the local colleges. But, I've made the decision that I want to go to RIT and it's really far away. So that's different.
Tawny. Well, that could also be related to being having a deaf spirit and wanting to travel a little more, and your family's background and culture perhaps values staying where they are and being able to see each other more frequently than that.
Liliana, exactly.
Yeah, so you've got to navigate both of those, the family culture and deaf culture. That certainly makes sense. Natnail, did you want to add to that? I do. Mine's not really about family, because most of my family's hearing. And some were born in the US, so the cultural differences are there and those background differences do exist. When we moved here, things went along fairly much as you might expect until I went to a deaf school. And then I sort of learned different words. I learned the idea of love and wanted to explore that more, which was completely different to what I had been through previously. So, and it's about knowing who the person is and what they value. So that to me is a bit different. That's more apparent. I think in previous generations, they were maybe a bit more conservative, perhaps a bit more religious. And this generation doesn't seem to have those pieces be quite as important now. And now I think our generation is learning to speak out too, to speak our truth, to be our authentic selves, to be more open to the world around us and not feel embarrassed or like we need to hide parts of ourselves from society. And yeah, don't have to feel alone with feeling whoever it is we are, because we're allowed to be and we can be who we are. I'm sure that was tough for some older generations. And I think I understand Liliana's point about her family staying close. I was considering Gallaudet because that's close to where my family is, but I made a choice. So I'm going to RIT as well because I want to see more of the world, to see a different view, to see what a different geography gives me. So I know what it looks like in the Maryland area. Now I'm going to get to see what it looks like in the upstate New York area and see what happens to life and my success in the future. So there's some differences. Tawny. Certainly, there's a couple of things at play here that I recognize. There's love and independence as two themes, and the desire to be accepted for who and what you are, which is absolutely as it should be. Not now. Accepted as human. Tawny. Absolutely. And I think that's a really big reminder of the importance of love for absolutely all of us. Regardless of the systemic barriers, we should all be able to love. Let's consider the next question. As you look back on your senior year, for Liliana and Natnail in particular, is there anything that you had wished that you'd known more about, or anything that you don't feel like you really got to leverage while you were in class? And Sabrina, the slight difference for you, is there anything you want to know before you get to your senior year that you think might help you on the path to graduation?
Liliana, that's a good question.
Natnail, how about you answer this first? Natnail. Sure. So do remember I wasn't born here. So I didn't have quite the same experience in my first few years, and I would say it probably wasn't as good as what the US provided when I did get here. I mean, there's Black people in America, obviously, but there's also African cultural elements for my family to consider. So I wish I had sort of understood some of the work around all of that and had a little deeper understanding. So that coming to school, being here in Washington, D.C., for example, to recognize that there is the history and tradition of slavery for Black Americans in this country, which was quite a shock to me, quite frankly, versus what an African immigrant experiences when they get here. And then people's, assumptions. People look at you as deaf and make some assumptions about particular behaviors and about their identity and who is Black and who isn't. So all of that tradition, I don't know that everybody was necessarily, everybody is seen the same. And like people like Beethoven were deaf. People don't know that those kinds of facts. So all of those things I think are a different way to treat and look at society. But I think it's so much influenced by the white model of the systems that have been established and all of that the Black perspective hasn't really come in yet. So I think it should be taught more overtly, and those essential truths that are sort of whitewashed should come out more. And I think that would help us be transformed in many ways. Tawny. Yeah, and when you look at the experience, the culture and the identity of who people identify with, you're right, it does get shifted to a very much white focus, and a lot of other communities are excluded from that history. Liliana?
Yeah, this is Liliana. I will add, this is a great conversation. I think in terms of talking about history specifically, we talked about the history of white colonization, European colonization, and we talked about Blacks as being enslaved individuals. And I don't know, I think we should have learned more about it. Like, what's the legacy of that? And also, what about the Latinx community and the Asian communities? And, in what ways have communities thrived and And I think that's something we really should have spent more time on.
Tawny, exactly. And I mean, it's not too late to change the curriculum. NDEC certainly would like to be part of that to ensure that all communities are represented. Now, did you want to add something? Yes, so I think that we do focus on the white experience of history, but in the US, a lot of Chinese workers come over to work on the railroads. We don't talk about that. And so I think that those who did the actual work should be highlighted more, and that should be part of history because they made some amazing improvements, and without that, who knows what we'd look like. But it often gets overlooked. If you're not part of the majority, your history and your contributions are getting overlooked. So I think that we should work to recognize people of color, those who are born in the US and those who are not, and spotlight us differently. Like if you look at the Latino, Latinx community, it feels like everyone's had an experience historically of white colonization, and that's the story that seems to be prevalent, and that should change. Tawny. Yeah, when we look at the immigrant experience, everyone has their own experience with that. And when we look at Indigenous people, they've experienced everybody else coming in as immigrants. So everyone should be valued. Immigrants coming here have really contributed to this country and to the idea of the American dream, although we could unpack that a little differently too. Sabrina, you haven't had a chance to answer this yet. What do you hope that you can learn now before going to your senior year?
I think I want to learn more about, I mean, I guess the things that are easily overlooked or marginalized. I want to learn more, you know, about both the beautiful and the ugly sides. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but I want to learn more about that kind of stuff. Yeah, like the Latinx community, you know, all of the other communities of color. It's, you know, like Natnail just said, the Chinese community, and I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, you know, people of color and communities of color that we could learn about their rich contributions. And the thing is, it's not just about like learning it, right? It's not just about like with a blues musician, or, you know, really making the time to understand what was the history or legacy of that music, or do you know what I mean? Like just little things like that. I want to have a deeper understanding of all of that.
Tawny. Absolutely. And when we look at BIPOC, which is a new term to me, which means Black, Indigenous people of color, which includes multitudes of identities. And they have their own cultural communities, their own heritage, their own history to contribute. So it's interesting to see our history and trying to get to more of the truth of information as it comes out in education, and looking at all of those experiences. Very much so. Just going to take a look for the next question. Okay, we're going to shift a little bit to learning styles. So Liliana mentioned earlier things like PowerPoints and video screens and how to navigate that technology. That comes down to, in a sense, preferences and learning style. So what are your preferences? Do you like to read information to understand it best? Do you like to see it on a video or assigned? What's the method that you think is best for you in terms of your learning style? And therefore what accommodations might be appropriate to bring in to recognize more learning styles? Sabrina?
I can take a stab at it. Yeah, this is Sabrina. You know, the assessments that are done online, do you know the VARK? V-A-R-K? Oh, it stands for something, obviously, but I don't know what it is. Visual, something, something, something. Anyway, lots of students. It's a way that you know that what kind of a learner you are. Like if you're, like you said, someone who likes to read or someone who likes to do more hands-on stuff. I think having those kinds of assessments can be really helpful for teachers, like in planning most effectively to work with their students. So that's what I would say is having those assessments.
Bonnie, interesting idea. Liliana?
Yeah, this is Liliana. You know, some people really like quizzes, some people like reading. Sometimes, you know, it's like if you're in the car or something and someone else is driving and you can like read on your phone to catch up. So I think just having like different ways of doing it. I actually like lots of different kinds of activities. Reading is one, quizzes, videotapes is another. Yeah.
Tawny, good to know. Now, did you want to add something? Yeah, I took an English class and they were talking about Frankenstein and we were reading that text. And there were times when the description didn't quite fit with what I was thinking of. And I would understand the concept for sure. But then as soon as we watched the movie and I could really visualize what that description in text was trying to say, oh, it gave me a much better understanding and view of the story. And the movie was from ages ago, decades ago, so, and the book as well. But I just remember struggling with the reading, but seeing the video and understanding it much better. And then applying that back to the reading and being able to understand it more with deeper comprehension. So, and that said, everyone has their own style. So, you know, the quizzes of 10 questions, 20 questions, that's all fine. I will say for me that tests are not my favorite thing. So they're not where I would really like to go. And I know people have some sort of test anxiety. And some people who really understand the concept, the context and the content are great. But as soon as it's test day, they don't understand the questions or they lose all of the information in their head. So, or, you know, they're supposed to write the answers in English and struggle with that. Even though they really understand the content, the test isn't really somehow testing that knowledge. It's just testing English. So if you've read it really well and you understand it all, I don't know, maybe there are other ways to be assessed. And what society thinks of as bright and smart might not be the same as what we think of as bright and smart. And we're trying to, you know, be equal to what society's expectations are, but sometimes I think it's not always the best solution for deaf students or for other students for that matter. We look at students of color in California. There is a low literacy rate and they typically have a second grade English level for their English language learning because it's harder to learn. So you have to think about that kind of experience because that means there are a lot of people in those populations who have a harder time with reading. So we need to ensure that we're providing support to that. So yeah, a lot of pieces in there for me. 20. These are all interesting pieces because school does comprise quizzes and tests, and there are different levels of language fluency and different ways to convey information. It can be signed, it can be video format, it can be a movie, it can be acted out, all manner of ways to get information in and help students make connections. I know that I used to get oftentimes connections from seeing a play and then recognizing that that was the text that we were looking at. So looking at the characters, the character development, for example. So yeah, I think all of those are really nice features to consider. So let me take a moment right now to thank you, the three of you, for your answers so far. You've been very brave and very thorough in your answers and so willing to be open with this audience with the answers that you're giving. And I'm getting some comments in the chat that say you are all thoroughly confident and competent looking individuals and really representing your age well. You seem to have a lot of enthusiasm and gumption and are looking at things to change. So I think it's really important that people are listening to what you've got to say, and the applications of this for the classroom, be it in high school or in college or to your work life after that, all says that I think the three of you are going to do great things.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm definitely sure of that. So let's talk about who your favorite teacher has been so far. Who do you think has made a real difference for you? I'll give you a second to think about You don't have to name them if you don't want to, but if you could share what kinds of qualities made that teacher your favorite. And if you do spell the name, make sure that you do it slightly slowly so that everyone can catch it. Liliana?
This is Liliana. You know, I imagine, you know, a baby going into a mainstream setting, maybe being quite frustrated, and then getting put into the school for the deaf at CSD. And so Jennifer Hipkind, who it was a deaf person, who signed ASL, which was new to me. I knew some C signs. She went out of her way to just make sure that I learned ASL. She would give me feedback on my non-manual markers. She would give me feedback on how I was positioning my body to learn ASL. And she saw potential in me. And because of that, I think that really lit the spark for me, that I saw the potential in myself. So I have to be so thankful to her for that.
Tawny. That's wonderful. Hopefully she's watching this right now. That would be wonderful. Sabrina?
Yeah, this is Sabrina. Someone who used to be my math teacher. I think it's 6th grade, if I'm remembering correctly. Calvin Doubt. Who's now in a different position as assistant principal, but just a tremendous investment in every student. Really gave students the sense that they were worth something. Would keep on us and make sure that, you know, we were doing the work and we were doing what we needed to do, and that we had the supports we needed. I think he made every student feel comfortable about school. So I would mention him, that it was just a fantastic teacher, and just now being assistant principal, just a fantastic person in that position.
Tawny. Yeah, that sounds great. Attention and support are really important. Now, do you have someone in mind? Now, there are a lot of people who've been supportive to me in my life. I might start with my dad. But there was a teacher who was just always there for me through the 4 years that I was in the school. And yeah, there were a lot of changes obviously in the school, but I think that person didn't change somehow. It's Jill Norman. And honestly, was helpful to me in so many things, so many areas. English for me was a second language. ASL was a third language when I got here, or maybe even fourth, depending on how I count that. Fourth communication system, certainly. And so was very, very helpful to me in making sure I understood the concepts and took the time to teach and make changes and adapt as we went through. And all of that made me smarter, more comfortable, more confident, more understanding of content. And just, I mean, I think it got me really into things really well. And there were times before high school, I would say, that I would want to say something and trying to learn how to say it and separate it from the content. And the things I've gotten in the last 4 years are just going to be really useful in college. So I would thank that teacher for teaching me that it's, how to say this, that it's okay to want to be the best person you can, but you don't have to be the brightest and smartest in the room. Everyone goes through struggles in their life, and I think this teacher was part of helping me get into MSSD and figure out the best way through. And I just credit them with so many things that they taught me. So yeah, thank you so much, Tawny. And I can totally see Jill saying all of those things to you. So yeah, and being paid back 10 times in return with everything that you learned. Absolutely true. And, you know, when I look at you, I see someone who has gotten through and didn't get forgotten and isn't forgetting about that experience, because there's a big world out there and there are teachers out there who have contributions to make. So thank you to all the teachers you've had and the teachers that are doing well with deaf students around the country.
Definitely.
So now for Liliana and Natnail, as you get ready to go off to college, when you were looking to apply at colleges, what did that process look like as COVID started to become part of the conversation? And this might be a learning experience for Sabrina in a year or two for her own college applications. But Liliana, let's start with you.
Sure. I did my applications pre-COVID. So, I didn't really know what to expect. There's like a checklist that you have to go through. And I really thought about it a lot. I wasn't sure then when COVID hit, am I going to go all the way to New York? Is that going to be safe? Am I going to leave my family? And I would say that everybody was really transparent about it. And they talked about the kinds of precautions that could be taken. And so I was able to make it through that checklist, if that's clear.
Tawny, that's good to know. Not now? Yeah, it was a bit similar. I had 3 sort of venues I was looking at. So the 3 choices I had that I submitted, and the second choice was the one that was available. But at the time, when I was looking to be accepted, COVID wasn't a big thing yet. And so I just thought, terrific, guess where I'm going? And then COVID hit. So now it's a different question. Like, is that school even going to be open? What is New York doing for safety and health? Where are we with all of this? Should I wait till next year, perhaps? And I'm not going to. But at the same time, I've got dreams. I've got things that I want to accomplish. I had to talk with my family about what this meant. I'll be the first one to get a degree, so that's big for us. And so it's sort of hard to say. There are all sorts of unexpected things happening, and we've got to consider that, but I don't want to be paranoid through that process. I know that they do have online classes. They're offering some things in the summertime to get used to. You can get some free credits provided if you take advantage of some of those opportunities. So I'm looking through all of those options as I go and trying to make informed decisions, because, it'll all be here before we know it, and I'll be heading off there. And I want to know what I need to do ahead of time. I've got a pretty basic understanding that's good so far, but a little more to learn, like what are the dorms going to look like? Is it going to be roommates or not? One roommate is safer than 3 or 4 roommates, obviously. So there's some questions to consider. But yeah, I think I'm ready to go for RIT. Tawny. Right, so this is a fairly big question. As you look at college and contemplate what it might look like, online, hybrid, etc., and Sabrina gets ready to go into a junior year, giving some thought to that, what would you have to say to younger students, perhaps elementary school or even younger in early childhood? Even middle schoolers, for sure. But what would you say to them, or what would you hope they can get, or what do you hope they learn that might be helpful to them as they go through their experience? And considering distance learning and the hybrid environment and masks and social distancing, etc., what kinds of things do you think would be helpful to those younger students? What would you say to your next generation? I know, Sabrina, you've got some siblings. Liliana, you definitely have. Not now, you do as well. Yeah, think about them and tell me what you'd say. Issues times 10, perhaps. Sure. Liliana, how about you go first?
So my 5-year-old brother, I saw was really unable to attend to the computer. He is hearing, but he was unable to attend. And so I think there's something there about when you're doing online learning and figuring out how to keep, maintain kids' attention. So maybe there's some sort of fill up a grab bag and then give that to parents. And then maybe each day after, the Zoomed experience, they can have a hands-on, they could go into that grab bag and pull out whatever it is that's being talked about. I think masks aren't going to be useful for younger kids because they're just going to take them off or play with them. So there's something about, something to have that kinesthetic experience to help maintain the attention and also to have them be very proud of the work that they're doing. This is Sabrina. I agree. I do. I agree. I think that it will help because just listening to a lecture is just impossible for kids to pay attention to. They get fatigued. Yeah. So having some sort of hands-on activities, I agree totally.
This is not now. I have a younger brother who's about to go to high school in the fall. Now, I just got done with 8th grade. And so comments for that brother and also for younger kids, perhaps. Mainstream schools can be hard. You have 30, 35 kids in one classroom, maybe, you know, and you're there all day. Teachers are trying to control all those kids the whole time. Please. I think it's better to have sort of a hybrid environment. And I'll say that because if you split kids up, maybe half day or maybe alternate days, then you've got less kids and more attention. The teachers otherwise are at higher risk of getting COVID if they've got full classrooms and then of taking that home, and so do the other kids if all of the kids are coming in all of the time. And managing that environment, I just think would be really hard. So I think a hybrid approach where you have half the kids at a time would be better. So that's a comment for the schools. And then I think, like Liliana said, I think kids always have things to do and they get really restless and they're moving all the time. And for particular age groups, you know, if they want to go to the bathroom or something, you've got to do things to help them pay attention. But they've got to learn that attention span. I think deaf kids really need to have a good attention span. And, you know, maybe for hearing kids, it's a little easier. And if they're fidgeting, for example, or using fidget spinners, it's a bit different. But for deaf students, I think we deal with it differently. So I think it's a really big help. That would be really big help for deaf kids, is the hands-on side. Tawny, I absolutely think hands-on are really important. And following step by step, learning together can make it much easier. Even on things like Zoom, it can be funny. The NDEC team has gotten together, and there is a teacher who's in an elementary school and has talked about their experiences with the elementary school kids. So using things like Spotlight to focus on a student who might otherwise not quite be paying attention is a good way to get that student to pay attention because they realize everyone's looking at them. So those kinds of tips are really good. It also lets the teacher check in on that student and say, you know, how's everything going, etc. But you can use Spotlight just for a moment to get a child's attention in a way that you otherwise can't because we're in 2 dimensions. So maybe that's an advantage of technology. Now, did you want to add? Right, so before this virus came about, you know, teachers would be sitting at the front of the classroom and, you know, you might be used to this. A lot of kids have a lot to say sometimes, but when we're on Zoom and you can see us all at the same time, or hear if you're a hearing student, however that works, you can be seen at all times. So you don't have to, you know, worry about what you're doing because you're there on the computer. So it can actually be a bit of a benefit and sort of say to yourself, right, this is my time to pay attention to this laptop and what's going on. Tawny, absolutely. And we had a presentation earlier today. So the keynote presenter was Dr. Kushal Nagar, and he made some comments about the importance of attention and how we divide attention and that we need breaks at times. So you need to be able to look away for a minute and process and digest information and have eye breaks, literally. So that's a good connection with technology, I think. So there's a small lesson learned from the previous presentation. So things like using an iPad to figure out math questions or to answer questions can be really interactive. I think that's a good approach. But with COVID, I think all of those things are even more important. So the audience is curious about a few other aspects for you 3 panelists, including a question around whether any of you went to mainstream schools? Did you have any hearing school exposure? And are there any particular challenges that you would want to convey to the audience and talk about those experiences?
I did not go to a public or mainstream school. That's not my experience. I have a deaf family, and so there was not a question about what educational placement I would be going to. But on the swimming team, everybody in my family does that. And so my older brother was also a swimmer. And to communicate, they would use a whiteboard. So it's hard sometimes when you're swimming to get everyone's attention, especially if you're swimming with hearing people. So that's the only experience that I've had. I was not educated in a mainstream school.
Thanks. Liliana?
Before I came into CSD, I did go to the public schools or the mainstream schools. I would say one of the challenges was attention, because I remember being confused a lot, really not sure what was happening at any given time. Sometimes I had interpreters not show up on time, or, you know, whatever. It was super frustrating. And so as a result, my attention kind of suffered. I just couldn't click into what was happening. And if there was like a big project to be done, I felt like I couldn't get up and present it. And I presented in sign, and sometimes the interpreters would ask me to use my voice. And I wanted to present in sign, and they were not respecting my decision. That was really challenging to deal with. I wish now, looking back, I wish, you know, that we had guaranteed that we had qualified interpreters in the classroom, you know, who were certified and who would show up on time and who wouldn't be looking at their phone and who would respect my decision of what language I wanted to use.
Tawny, yes, that respect's very important. Natnail? Yeah, as I said, I went to several schools, and 5 of them were mainstream schools or hearing schools. So I grew up with a lot of hearing kids in my general environment, family members. So nobody knew I was deaf until I was 4 anyway. So then my parents were trying to learn how to manage that and, you know, raise kids and trying to figure out what to do and how, and wondering if they could handle that. And, you know, there were things that I would get punished for, but I had no idea what it was I was doing from what they thought they were trying to teach. So things like that were kind of difficult. Then we moved here and found out that I was deaf and made a different set of decisions. So first it was a mainstream school, but my dad at first was a bit afraid to go to the school because he thought I would be in trouble if I got pulled out of the class. And, you know, if my hearing was disintegrating. And the teachers were like, no, actually he's fine. He's got hearing loss, but that's all he's got. We can work with that. And I think that's where things started to shift for me. So I was in an oral program for a while and was starting to understand the use of cued speech. Before that school, I'd done a little cueing. So I had a variety of different experiences trying to pick up English from the cued speech approach and the oral approach, and trying to get my English proficiency to where it needed to be. And so it certainly was helpful. But I think that got me understanding English, but not always understanding the concepts. So yeah, I came to Kendall, the Kendall Demonstration Elementary School in DC, and sort of found who I was as a person, found my identity, found my energy and my sense of self, and started really understanding from that point on. So I've been enmeshed in the deaf community since then. And it also obviously improved my English being in school, and that was good. Then when I got into MSSD, my English sort of took off to the point where I was, you know, more than a 12th grade level reader. And so public schools are not all bad. I just think they don't really understand how to best educate deaf kids. And if they don't know what they're doing, and they don't understand the ways to adapt to a deaf student in the classroom, then I think a deaf school is the best environment. So yeah, a bit of a mixed experience there, and some issues in there for sure. But it's all been part of the journey of me finding out who I am and where I'm from.
Yeah, if I could just add, this is Liliana. talking about a mainstream experience, I remember, you know, having hearing teachers and having some who were incredibly patient with me, and they would check in with me, and I appreciated that so much. I felt valued. Whereas other teachers were pretty much on their own timetable, and it didn't matter if I was lost. You know, I'd sit in the back and the interpreter wasn't there and I just didn't know what was going on, or, you know, they were coming late or whatever. And the teacher just sort of kept rolling on. Like it was not important that I be on the same page as everybody else. But I did have some teachers who absolutely went out of their way to check in on me and make sure, you know, that I was keeping up, and they would use gesture, you know, they would do whatever they had to do to make sure that I was okay.
Tawny. So the message I'm getting is that you wish that public school teachers had more training and more knowledge of how to work with deaf students and how to navigate the differences in learning styles that they might be seeing, to ensure that they are tailoring their teaching to that particular students.
Yes, yes, yes.
Natnail. So I think that it's important to look at the degrees. So if you have a bachelor's degree, it looks like that's the level of people who teach in the deaf schools, but you have a master's degree and it seems then you can teach in the mainstream schools. So that's something to look at, I think. We need to make sure that there's more depth of understanding and education for deaf students and deaf-blind students, so that they've all got the opportunities equal to hearing students and can really benefit from teachers then who have the expertise and training to work in those school settings. So I think that deaf students should have more opportunities to get those advanced degrees as well, because I think that's going to be an influence on deaf education. Tawny. So you're right, states differ in their requirements for teachers in different school settings. I think we have to keep in mind that there's an organization called the Council on Educators for the Deaf, and they work at the deaf community level and look to provide standards and standard expectations for teacher preparation programs, learning for those students who are learning at the university level how to become teachers of the deaf. But those standards aren't necessarily universal yet. So I think that's something we need to continue to escalate, so that anyone who teaches deaf students in any setting, a charter school, a deaf school, a public school, has the requisite foundational learning and comes into it with that kind of standardized block of knowledge. Yeah, I think that's really important to share. Thank you for those perspectives. So if you look at a teacher who is going to work with a deaf or hard of hearing student in their mainstream setting this coming school year, have you got any tips or advice for that teacher? Not now? Looks like you have a thought. Not now. So yes, I know a lot of people in mainstream schools, and like I said before, some of them are good. Some of them work out really well and they might be the right educational place for you. And you might go on to university and do great things with your future, which is fantastic. I'm not against that at all, because it's a decision that you've made with what you feel comfortable with. But I also think there are some people who are not prepared for that part, who don't push, and that makes it a little harder. So you might want to talk to people about what the benefits are for a deaf school as well. So Kendall, for example, was really good for me, but I know there are other states and you just want to see what they have. And I think you should push kids to try out a deaf school and see what changes happen, see what difference that can make. And honestly, as long as they come out of it understanding and as a sense of community, I think all of those are real positives. But if you come out with no understanding of the deaf community and you're just going to school to sit in the classroom, I don't think that's effective. I think those kids should be encouraged to try out a deaf school and see what happens. And if you look at a hearing school, a mainstream setting, what does that look like for students? So do they have similar experiences as deaf kids? Because deaf kids, I think, are really thirsting for that sense of community and connection. And that's not necessarily happening in the mainstream setting when they're the only ones. So I think you might want to consider pushing them into, or helping them consider deaf schools.
Sabrina? I guess it's really important. The piece of advice that I would share is about advocacy. You know, if the interpreter isn't qualified, you need to speak up as a student because it's your education and it's so important. You can't, like Liliana said, not all interpreters are great. And, she had ones who looked at their phone and didn't respect her and didn't show up on time. And that's really crucial for, students to be self-advocates because that is not acceptable. It's just critical.
Liliana, you've got some thoughts?
When I went to CSD, I had so many kids that I was in touch with, and then you come to CSD and you come into a totally different community, and I do not see kids regretting that choice.
Tawny. So any tips then, based on your experience, that you wish people had in terms of access?
I mean, I think it's like Sabrina and Natnail said, as long as you're thriving, as you're growing, and you have to find your own allies, and you'll find what's right.
Now, did you want to add? Yes, I think the difference is, whether you're alone or not. If you've got people supporting you and you're in contact, that can be good. But if you've got if you've got the community behind you, for example, and they're advocating for you, or your family members are advocating with you, that can work out really well. But they've got to provide you with some sort of social solutions for some of these things so that you can get your foot in the door. So I would say encourage those students. Make sure that they have networks, that they're connected to people. I think that's a solution that helps people find their way. Tawny. Yeah, it's really important to believe that we're not alone. And I think that's a really good reminder for all of us to have that sense of community behind us. Okay, I think we're at our last question. So what advice would you have? What last tips or techniques for any environment, mainstream schools, deaf schools, anything? What advice do you think you as representatives of your generation have for teachers? Sabrina.
Yeah, this is Sabrina. My advice is to be patient. I mean, there's just no question about that. Patience is just key. And education is a really, really, really tough job. My dad was in the field for many years as a science teacher. So I get it, and I respect, the work that educators do. But, kids have, their brains are developing. They're not at their end point yet. And so that doesn't even happen until we're in our 30s, right? So it's just that growing is continuing to happen. And so I feel like just the patience that an educator can bring to it. And, it's sort of, and also like, don't take it personally. Like, I love all of my teachers. Sometimes they make me crazy, but I love all of my teachers because I know how much they've given for us. So I guess my advice is just to cultivate patience, be patient.
Indeed. Liliana?
I agree with Sabrina. I would add to that the ability to recognize that some teachers maybe don't realize how much they've meant to us. Everything that they have done has really impacted us. It's not, taken for granted. It's not a big deal. I mean, having that original teacher who sat down with me with a laptop to help me through my ASL development and acquisition, I remember that all these years later. It was an amazing gift. So be proud of the work that you're doing because it matters.
Tawny, absolutely. Natnail, have you got some thoughts? Natnail, I do. I'd say don't give up. Kids are kids, right? And as we're going through our journeys, we recognize that you as a teacher have got another 40 kids coming behind us. So don't give up on anyone. I know that life can go past quickly and can be in a hurry. And, we've got years ahead of us. And I applaud all the teachers that I've ever had. I honestly can't beat them. I can't see, getting to where I am without them. But I would say don't give up on your students. Because if you don't give up, that student won't give up. And that can make all kinds of difference to them in their world. So you have no idea what kind of advice and thoughts they take from you in terms of their self-esteem, and your ability to impact students in so many ways is really huge. Showing them that you care, and that students are part of the next generation, that, you know, can be part of solutions as we come. They might be future politicians. They might be, you know, as we all are, humans put here on earth, and we all have that in common. So, you know, live with truth and don't give up. And, you know, if you see your kids and you're a teacher, you should feel proud of where it is that they are going and what they're accomplishing, because they've done it with your assistance. And, you know, I think kids are one of the greatest gifts that there is to offer the world. Tawny, what a wonderful way to finish. Know how to make a difference, be patient, and don't give up. It's an incredibly powerful message from the three of you. And, you know, in many ways, you three students are teachers for us every day as well. The way that you challenge perspectives and question information is remarkable, because it makes us think as well and reconsider our thoughts. It's very much a two-way street there. It absolutely is. Likewise, between yourselves and your peers, that's a two-way street as well. So I think that was a lovely way to wrap up today's panel. Thank you so very much to the three of you for an absolutely outstanding set of thoughts for us to consider. The audience has very much appreciated those thoughts, and we're grateful for your time, for joining us, taking time out of your busy summer schedules to be with us today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
I am so glad to hear that. Thank you also to the wonderful interpreting services and keeping up with you and all your thoughts. Bravo to them. And also our thanks to the CART reporter, the captioner for today. Thank you, CSD Learns, for your sponsorship of this event. Bravo to your team. And last but not least, thank you to you audience members for joining us and giving us your time and energy. We will see you tomorrow for day 2 of NDEC 2020's Engage conference. So we will see you at 12 o'clock Eastern time for Blake Cully's presentation, which we're very much looking forward to. So we will see you at noon tomorrow. Meanwhile, have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day. And we will now go to the closing slide to again give our thanks to the sponsors for this wonderful event. Thank you all so much.